April 1945. In a displaced persons camp outside Landshut, Bavaria, a line of children stood in the rain with tin cups in their hands. Behind them, inside a locked American supply shed, there were sacks of flour stacked shoulder high. There were wool blankets still tied in army twine. There were crates of condensed milk marked for civilian relief. And none of it was moving. A corporal slid a chain through the fence gate and snapped the padlock shut. On the other side of the wire, a Polish mother pulled a small ivory hair comb from her coat pocket. It was the last clean thing she owned. She pressed it into a guard's palm and begged him for fever medicine for her son. The guard looked at the comb, then he looked at the warehouse. Then he told her to come back after dark. That was the system. Not chaos. Not confusion. Not a mistake in the paperwork. A system. The food was counted twice, once for the army ledger, and once for the men who had learned how to sell mercy by the spoonful. By the end of that week, a thin Danish relief inspector named Ingrid Falk was carrying a brown folder under her coat. Inside it were copied ration cards, crate numbers, photographs of empty store shelves, and 5 signed statements from women who were terrified to put their names on paper. The folder was not heavy, but it was heavy enough to bring General George S. Patton to the gate. Ingrid Falk was 32 years old and had spent most of the war walking into places where armed men preferred silence. She had been born in Copenhagen, the daughter of a maritime lawyer who taught her that rules only mattered when they protected the powerless. Before Germany collapsed, she had inspected prisoner transfers, hospital kitchens, and bomb-damaged refugee stations. She knew the difference between a camp that was starving because there was no food and a camp that was starving because food had become currency. Landshut took her less than a day to understand. The records said 642 civilians were receiving full emergency rations. The soup kettles said otherwise. The records said every family had been issued 2 wool blankets. In the women's tent, Ingrid counted 8 blankets for 53 people. The records said medical supplies were distributed through the infirmary. But the camp nurse showed her a locked cabinet with dust on the handles. For 3 days, Ingrid moved quietly. She wrote down box numbers from torn shipping labels. She counted boot prints around the back fence. She listened to children cough through the canvas walls. And when the American guards saw her coming, the women dropped their eyes. That was the detail she could not forget. Not the empty shelves, not the altered ledger, the eyes. These were people who had survived occupation, forced labor, hunger, and the broken roads of Europe. But inside a camp run by the Liberating Army, they had learned to fear the sound of American boots. That was not a supply problem. That was a moral collapse. The officer in command was Major Lewis Harrow, a 37-year-old quartermaster officer from Oklahoma. Before the war, Harrow had made money moving oil field equipment through shortage markets. He understood inventory. He understood leverage. Most of all, he understood that desperate people would trade almost anything for the thing they needed that day. By April 1945, Harrow had built a small kingdom behind wire. His office was dry. His stove burned coal all night. There were 3 captured cameras in his desk drawer, 2 German silver cigarette cases in his footlocker, and a hidden crate of French brandy under a tarp-marked laundry soap. Outside, the refugees slept in leaking tents. Inside, Harrow kept a handwritten list of who owed what: a wedding ring for flour, a watch for penicillin, a woman's labor for a child's blanket. He did not call it theft. He called it order. His men called it camp tax. Ingrid called it what it was: On the fourth morning, she stepped into Harrow's office with her folder under one arm. Rain ran from the brim of her hat onto the floorboards. Harrow did not stand. He was eating toast with tinned butter. "You people from the relief committees," he said, "always arrive after the fighting and start counting spoons." Ingrid placed one copied ration card on his desk. "This child was issued milk yesterday," she said. Harrow glanced at it. "Then your problem is solved. The child died last night." The room went still. Harrow slowly set down his knife. Ingrid placed a second paper beside the first. "This is the crate number for the milk that should have reached him. It was signed into your yard, then removed from your civilian ledger." Harrow leaned back in his chair. "Lady, this is a war zone. Paper gets dirty." She placed down a photograph. It showed the same crate, half covered by canvas in the back of a truck, beside 2 cases of confiscated watches. "This paper is very clean," Ingrid said. Harrow's jaw tightened. Outside the window, a guard laughed at something near the ration fence. Ingrid opened the folder again. 3 women state your men demanded valuables before releasing blankets. 2 state they were told medicine would be available only after dark. 1 states a guard threatened to mark her family as unruly if she spoke to any inspector. Harrow stood up then. He was not a large man, but he had the confidence of a man who had never been corrected by anyone he considered beneath him. "You do not understand the people in this camp," he said. "They are displaced persons. Half of them cannot prove their own names. They will say anything for extra food. They are under American military protection. They are under my administration. That is not the same thing." Harrow came around the desk. His boots were polished. Ingrid looked at them because every tent outside was ankle-deep in mud. "You think headquarters cares about this," he said. "The army is moving fuel, ammunition, bridges, prisoners. Nobody is going to stop a campaign because some stateless mouths want larger portions." Ingrid closed the folder. "You are not running a camp," she said. She looked toward the wire fence. "You are running a market." Harrow smiled. "Then learn how markets work." He reached for the folder. Ingrid pulled it back. For the first time, his smile disappeared. "You will leave that report here," he said. "No, you will leave it here, or I will have you removed from this compound." Ingrid looked directly at him. "Then remove me." Harrow made one mistake. He ordered 2 military policemen to escort Ingrid to the gate. One of those men had watched a feverish boy die without milk the night before. He did not take her folder. He took her to the nearest civil affairs post. By late afternoon, the report was in the hands of a staff colonel attached to 3rd Army headquarters. By nightfall, it had been summarized. By dawn, George S. Patton was standing in the mud outside Harrow's gate. No band played. No speech was announced. A jeep and 2 trucks came through the road mist, their tires cutting through the brown water gathered in the ruts. Patton stepped out wearing a helmet, riding breeches, and a coat darkened by rain at the shoulders. The camp saw him before Harrow did. A murmur passed through the tents, then through the ration line, then into the guard post. The general did not go first to the office. He walked to the supply shed. He looked at the lock. He looked at the children. Then he looked through the wire at stacked blankets that had never touched a refugee's back. Only then did he ask for the officer in command. Major Harrow came out of the administrative shack fastening his jacket. His face had gone flat and pale. "General," he said, "I was not informed of an inspection." Patton turned from the fence. "That is why it is an inspection." Harrow straightened. "We have had supply complications, sir." Patton held up Ingrid's folder. "You have had criminal complications. The words carried across the yard. A guard near the fence stopped moving. Patton opened the folder and read from the first page. 642 persons assigned to this compound. 41 children under the age of 10 listed as medically vulnerable. Emergency rations signed into quartermaster custody on April 21st. Less than half distributed. He looked up. "Is that your signature?" Harrow swallowed. "Yes, sir." Patton turned the page. 37 wool blankets signed as issued to Barracks 4. Inspector counted 8. He turned another page. Medical crates signed as transferred to infirmary. Infirmary nurse states cabinet remained empty. Another page. Civilian valuables recovered from restricted supply area. Patton closed the folder. "Explain it." Harrow did what men like him always do when the truth becomes visible. He tried to make cruelty sound practical. "General, these people are not soldiers. My men are wet, hungry, and exhausted. Discipline is hard in rear areas. The refugees exaggerate because they want more than their allocation. We had to keep control. We had to protect Army property." Patton stepped closer. "Army property? Yes, sir. Those blankets were sent here so sick civilians would not freeze." "Yes, sir. But those rations were sent here so children would not starve." "Yes, sir, but the situation, Patton said, "is that you were handed helpless people and decided they were inventory. You counted their hunger as an opportunity." Harrow's mouth opened, then closed. Patton's voice stayed low. "That made it worse. You wear the uniform of an army that just fought its way across Europe, claiming it came to free people from cages, ledgers, and armed thieves." He pointed to the supply fence. "And you built your own little version of all three." No one moved. The rain tapped on steel helmets. Patton turned to the MPs. "Open that shed." A sergeant stepped forward with bolt cutters. Harrow moved instinctively. "General, with respect, those stores are under my responsibility until properly released." Patton did not look at him. They were released when they crossed that gate. The lock snapped. The sound was small, but every person in the yard heard it. Patton ordered a civil affairs captain to take control of the records. He ordered the infirmary nurse brought to the warehouse. He ordered every guard disarmed and every man assigned to Harrow's detachment confined for questioning until the judge advocate arrived. Then he gave the order the camp remembered. "Count the supplies out loud." For the next hour in the rain, Harrow stood beside the open shed, while American soldiers carried food and blankets into the yard. Each crate was opened. Each label was read. Each ration was marked against the names of the families who should have received it days earlier. Flour, milk, beans, soap, quinine, blankets. The words became a drumbeat. The refugees did not cheer at first. They watched as if someone might change his mind. A Lithuanian father received 2 blankets and held them against his face before giving them to his children. A French teenager took a tin of milk with both hands and backed away slowly, as if it might be taken from him again. The Polish mother, who had given up the ivory comb, stood near the front of the line, with her feverish son in her arms. A military policeman searched the guard hut and found the comb wrapped in a handkerchief beside 3 rings and a cracked pocket watch. He handed it to Patton. Patton looked at it for half a second. Then he gave it to Ingrid. Ingrid walked to the mother and placed it back in her palm. The woman did not speak. She only closed her fist around it and started shaking. That was the moment Harrow finally understood that the camp was no longer his. Not when Patton arrived. Not when the lock was cut. When the people he had priced and threatened and reduced to ledger lines began receiving what had already belonged to them. By noon, a new civil affairs team had taken over the compound. The supply fence stayed open. The ledgers were removed. The guards were marched out under armed escort, not as conquering soldiers, but as suspects. Harrow was not allowed to return to his office. He stood in the mud while investigators carried out his brandy. The cameras, the cigarette cases, the hidden watches, and a notebook that listed refugee names beside private payments. Each item was tagged. Each name was copied. Each theft became evidence. Patton watched without celebration. He did not look pleased. He looked disgusted. At one point, a young lieutenant muttered that the matter could have waited for a formal channel. Patton turned on him so sharply the lieutenant stepped back. "The formal channel was a starving child," Patton said. No one argued after that. What happened at Landshut did not become one of the famous stories painted onto campaign maps. There were no tanks breaking through, no town liberated under fire, no hill taken. It was a rear area compound in cold rain, a locked warehouse, and a general furious enough to treat a ration ledger like a battlefield report. But the order that followed moved faster than gossip. Within days, nearby displaced persons camps were inspected by officers who had not expected to be asked hard questions. Supply fences were inventoried. Medical cabinets were opened. Civilian complaints were no longer waved away as nuisance talk. Every camp commander learned the lesson hidden inside Harrow's disgrace. A refugee under American protection was not a beggar, not a burden, not a mouth, a protected person. And the word protected had to mean something even when no cameras were present, even when the war was nearly over, even when the victims had no flag left to stand behind. Ingrid Falk left Bavaria months later with the same brown folder, now thinner because its copies had become evidence. She never described herself as brave. When asked about the camp, she said only that hungry people do not need pity first. They need the truth counted correctly. Years afterward, she kept the ivory comb in a small envelope with no label, not because it was valuable, because it had once been used as the price of mercy. Major Lewis Harrow disappeared into the machinery of military justice. The official charges were written in careful language. Misappropriation, extortion, dereliction, conduct unbecoming. Careful words for ugly things. But the people in the camp remembered simpler language. He locked the food, he sold the blankets. He made the weak pay for what had already been given to them. And then one morning, the wire came down. Patton's anger that day was not clean or gentle. It was not a committee finding. It was not a memorandum filed 3 weeks too late. It was the blunt recognition that an army can win every road, every bridge, every town, and still lose its honor in one locked shed. The wire came down. The rations went out. And for one cold Bavarian morning, liberation finally meant what the word had promised.